Good evening, friends. We are going to discuss today firearm injuries. Why I am discussing this is for several reasons. Number one, in the recent TNP exam, there has been a question on firearm injuries, which after talking to the residents, I find that this was poorly attempted. Number two, there can be a viva question in firearm injuries. You may have a patient in the ward round who has been operated for a firearm injury in the chest or in the abdomen or in the periphery. So all these questions can be asked in viva. Number three, from your day-to-day life, it is important to know firearm because firearm, as I say, attracts lot of crowd because even a firearm injury in the leg will attract 500 visitors compared to a high risk peritonitis because people do not anticipate the nature of injury to the peritonitis as compared to firearm injuries. So I will divide this topic into following component. I am going to discuss first the basics of ballistics. I don't want you to be treated as a forensic expert, but some basic things you are ought to know, like discuss the anatomy of thyroid gland. This is part A. Part B is in relation to thyroidectomy. Now, when the question is discuss the types of firearm injury weapons, as a surgeon, we ought to know the anatomy of thyroid, so we ought to know the types of firearm weapons and then the types of bullets, then there are some characteristics, then injuries, and finally we will discuss the recent advances in firearm injuries. So we also need to know how many marks a question is dedicated to. A question, when it asked 3 marks regarding the types of firearm weapons, then you need to be very precise. And I will tell you the precise answer as well as the long answer. You should have all the knowledge with you and deliver as much as needed because you are supposed to answer a question in 15 minutes. The actual time is 18 minutes, but if we have to answer every question within 15 minutes and try to make as many diagrams as possible, because if you know your subject, draw the diagram, and if you don't, please for God's sake don't make a wrong diagram, because the examiner then you make very clear that you know nothing about it. So let me start with the ballistics first. So I will draw some diagram. Okay. The firearm injuries is defined as a mechanism of assault in which the bullet or the firearm is given velocity in a tube which is called the muzzle, and the velocity is given by sudden explosive gas mixture. So if we have to, I am trying to draw a diagram for let me make a principal diagram. This will stand true for all kind of firearm. A firearm has got, number one, a trigger. This is the trigger. The trigger has a hammer here. Now this hammer has a percussion pin here. When we pull, now in the gun, this part is called the breech and this part is called the muzzle end. This is the barrel. Here the bullet is fired here. Now we have common knowledge. A surgeon should know at least 4 or 5 types of weapons. One common weapon is a revolver. The revolver has, welcome dear Ravi, miss you in the conference. Both of us were very busy. Anyway, the revolver has got on an average 6 to 9 slots in which the bullets are loaded already. Now when each time you pull the trigger, there are 2 kinds of revolvers. One with single action, second with double action. And in the single action, every time you fire, you have to rotate the cylinder for the next bullet to come in. In a double action, when with the pulling of the trigger, the cylinder rotates itself. So that is revolver, one trigger, one fire. Second thing is something called a pistol. Pistol, you have to load nothing. Around 6 to 12 bullets are loaded in the handle of the pistol, and every time we fire, the spring pushes the next bullet to the firing range. Then there is a rifle. In rifle, there are 2 kinds of rifle. The ancient rifles, you have to load each time from the breech end. This is breech end. This opens down like this. You load a bullet from the breech end, lock the bullet. Then when you push the trigger, one fire occurs. That is manual rifle. Second thing is the shotgun. Shotgun also can be single barrel, can be double barrel. So again from the breech end, you bend the breech end downwards, this opens up, and then you load 2 cartridges or 1 cartridge from this end, and when we fire, each time we have to load again. Automatic is a weapon in which once you have pulled the trigger, the bullets continue to come in front of the percussion hammer themselves, and till you relieve, it continues to fire till every single bullet is fired outside. Welcome, Dr. Sharma. So, to summarize, we have got few types of weapons which every surgeon should know. Number 1, handheld, that is revolver and pistol. I have told the differences. Number 2, manually loaded rifle. Number 2, automatic rifle. and then there are some variants of that which you need not know. Now, this what we are discussing is defined as proximal ballistics. Proximal ballistics is everything which concern regarding the firearm and the bullet. Now I have discussed the equipment. Now I will tell you the broad principles of bullet as relation to a surgeon. Now if we try to understand, to save time, I have drawn a diagram of to understand the principles of a shotgun. Shotgun is an equipment in which multiple pellets are fired. It is always loaded from the breech end. Currently all instruments are loaded from breech end. So if we try to understand, the front of it is, as far as the surgeon is concerned, he has only two criteria: the type of the bullet which is fired. Then we will go the classification. This has got two components. The front is cardboard based, the base is metallic. Now this metallic base has got contents in it which is called primer. Primer is one which starts the ignition or fire. Well, we have here a small area which is called percussion cap. On this percussion cap, when we pull the trigger, the percussion hammer hits on the percussion cap, thereby it ignites the flame here. Now next to that is the gunpowder. Now gunpowder, once we say gunpowder, we need to know the types of gunpowder. It is important for several reasons. We have types of gunpowder. One which is gunpowder with the smoke. Number two, which is black gunpowder. Black gunpowder has got charcoal, sulfur and potassium nitrate. It produces a lot of black smoke when fired, and the gas produced per 1 grain of black gunpowder is around 200 to 300 cc of gas. Hence the velocity created, what is called as muzzle velocity created, is less. That is if when we are using black gunpowder. Then it can be semi-smokeless powder, in which 80% is black gunpowder and 20% is smokeless powder. Number 3, totally smokeless fire. Now totally smokeless fire is produced by nitroglycerin and nitrocellulose. These few gross items the examiner expects you to know, at least during the exam. Nitroglycerin and nitrocellulose are two products which produce smokeless blast. They produce 700 to 800 cc of gas per grain of mixture, and when such a blast occurs, it gives a larger muzzle velocity. Smokeless powders are used in the rifle fires. So you need to know 2-3 things more regarding the. Let me come back to the standard shotgun fire. I am trying to repeat. This brass component has a primer which blasts, which gives fire and explosion to the gunpowder. Next to the gunpowder is a wad formed of a cork. This separates pellets from the gunpowder. in between there are some cardboard partitions here, here and here, three cardboards. They keep the compartments tight and packed. When the blast occurs here, then the gases push the wad outside, and under pressure all the pellets are pushed out. Now configuration of a standard pellet or bullet remains the same. In shotgun, there are several lead particles which are being used, and in rifle bullets the configuration is all made of brass, because the blast is of higher nature and the velocity created is higher, hence everything remains the same, but the blast is of higher nature. That is why the jacket is formed by a metallic body. Now let us remember that the kinetic energy which a bullet carries, it is kinetic energy. Let me draw again. Kinetic energy is half mv square. So if we want more lethal weapon, either we can increase the mass. How can we increase the mass? Either we increase the size of the bullet, or we increase the weight of the material. Second thing is the velocity. So the bullets are classified into slow moving, medium range, higher range. So it is up to 1100 feet per second is slow moving. 11 to 2000 is medium pace. 2000 to 3500 is high velocity. Now most of the handheld weapons have got a velocity of this range, and most of the rifles are in this range. Another fact of muzzle. Now rifles, when we look at the barrel, the barrel of the rifle had got spiral grooves within. These grooves are helpful, number one, to increase the velocity. Number two, it increases the distance to which it can be effective. Number three, it hits the straight track. The parabola, the traveling of the firearm bullet, remains straight. Now these are the three utilities of, this is called rifling, or the grooves within the barrel. When the bullet comes out from this end, because suddenly lot of smoke comes out, that gives rise to the sound of the fire. Now if a casing is applied on this end with several small holes on the side, from where the gas gradually comes out, so that is a mechanism of a silencer applied over the rifle to make it less noiseful, or the fire noise is decreased. That is called the mechanism of silencer. Now this is all regarding proximal ballistics, what fire occurs within the barrel. I have discussed about the instrument and the ballistic and the powders of varieties of the powder which are used. Now shotgun is what are the differences between a shotgun and a rifle? The barrel is straight, there are no spiral linings within, and the cartridge used has got multiple pellets. They all form a big circle around it. Let me draw another diagram to when a shotgun fires, all the pellets spread in a circle. This spread of a circle can be determined the distance from which it is fired, and all the this is another common question in the exam which is asked. Please enunciate the differences between wound of entry and wound of exit. Even if it is a theory question, if the mechanism is asked, please mention this, because this can fetch you good credit marks, and this all of you should know of your own. I'm not going to waste time on wound of entry and exit. Two basic things you should know: that entry will be a smaller wound, edge is gone in, here the edges come out. Similarly, here the fat goes in, here you may have fat. Then all the tattooing and the singeing of hair and blackening and soot, all those things are here on the entry wound, and they are not in the exit wound. And exit wounds are larger wounds than entry wound. Now, there are some terms in relation to the intermediate ballistics. Intermediate ballistic is when the bullet has come out from the muzzle end until it has hit the target. So, few terms you should know. First term is tandem bullet. Tandem is when you fire one bullet, it has not come out. Then there is another second bullet is fired. So two bullets come out together. So when the person has pulled the trigger once, you may have two bullets coming together, and there will be two entries with one trigger. Then there is a pharyngal bullet, in which the bullet hits the human tissues, and after hitting the bone, the bullet may break and it fragments. Well, it is rarely that a bullet fragments. Only local made bullets may fragment. But most common, the fragmentation is of a bone. And when the bullet is hit by a bone is hit by a bullet, the bone fragments get all the velocity, and that leads to impact like another bullet going through the tissue. And then you should know what is a ricocheted bullet. When bullet, after hitting a bony surface, changes its track and rotates, and well, that is called ricocheted bullet. Then say a couple of more names. Souvenir bullet. When a bullet which has stayed in the human body for a long time, it develops a fibrous tract around. This is known as souvenir bullet. Crime bullet is name given to the bullet which is removed from the human body at the time of surgery, and it is produced in the court, is known as crime bullet. So That is regarding the bullet. Now let me say the target ballistics. What happens when a bullet hits the human body? Let me take another. Okay. Say in a rifle fire, this is the component which is going to go out. This shell is going to fall down there only. Okay. Now let us say this is the bullet. And this is going to hit the body here. What are our concern? There will be one tract which is called penetration injury. Penetration is as the bullet travels, that part is injured. Then there is a cavitational effect, because it never passes straight. The bullet is moving like this, so it produces laceration of surrounding tissue and produces a cavitatory effect. Which is called cavitation. Now when a high velocity bullet enters, we have a penetration effect, we have a cavitatory effect which produces permanent cavity because of laceration. Then along with this, it also has a pressure wave. This pressure wave produces a further injury along the tract, which is called temporary cavitation. So at the target, a bullet produces 1, the penetration effect, 2, a permanent cavitation, 3, a temporary cavitation because of the pressure waves. Hence, all these things have to be taken in account when we are operating on such patients. Let me tell you that in a bowel injury, when a high velocity bullet passes, similarly you will have one hole which is visible, which is mechanical hole. Then you will have a surrounding some area which has thermal injury, and you also have the cavitatory effect and the pressure wave effect. Hence, when you are operating upon a bowel injury, in cases of a firearm injury, please debride to a wide area if you are planning to close the injury, and even if not, then also debride to a wider area, because some injuries will manifest after 6 to 24 hours. Most of these patients should have a proximal ostomy until the patient is stable and there is only one injury and a fresh injury with minimal contamination. So that is about the target injury. Now we have discussed the types of weapons, the types of bullets, and also the types of injuries which happen when the patient is injured with the firearm bullets. Now the last part is, what are the recent advances in firearm injury management? When we say recent, that means the examiners for a postgraduate level, they give you a margin of last 10 years or so. That is, for general surgeons, 10 years is fairly latest things. When you go to specialty, they want you the same year or maybe last 2-3 years. And now I will classify the recent advances into, number one, based on approach, based on I will classify number one based on the approach, then we will discuss organ wise, and then based on chemotherapy contributed to saving lot of lives. So based on the approach, let's start from the neck. In the neck, now previously all the injuries in the neck were divided into 3 zones and the planning was zone based. Currently the thought process is that all neck penetrating injuries are based on no zone principle. When we say no zone principle, first thing, any penetrating neck injury is never probed and it is considered neck penetration once the platysma is violated. Okay, now there are some hard signs. This examiner can ask you, what are the hard signs? Number one, the younger friends, the exam going candidate can note down. Number one, airway obstruction. Number two, unresponsive shock. Number three, profuse bleeding. Air comings out through the wound, stridor, and subcutaneous air. These are the hard signs. So under these circumstances, all of them will require urgent exploration. And if not, then in a hemodynamically stable patient with no hard signs, he should have a contrast CT neck, maybe endoscopy to evaluate the disease and manage accordingly. In abdominal firearm injuries, first point is that DPL is out now. Some years ago, DPL was a constant question asked in exam. But in the current thought process, first point is the DPL is out in all. Again, in abdominal firearm injuries, you must start by saying all unstable patients would be explored. But patients who are stable can have a CT evaluation and the injuries managed accordingly, either with laparoscopy or open surgery. While managing the thoracic firearm injuries, the approach to the right-sided in hemodynamically stable patients, approach to the right-sided penetrating injuries, more so in the lower thorax, diaphragm and liver, can be evaluated, and a lot of time the exploration can be avoided. Number 4, we have discussed neck, abdomen, thorax. Number 4, the extremities. Now we rely more on Mangel's extremity severity score. For DNB candidates, you can have even a short note on Mangled extremity severity score. This score is based on 4 items: the ischemia time, age of the patient, 30 to 50 and 50 and above. Presence of shock and the mechanism of injury. You may not exactly remember the score on the day of exam, because you are supposed to know the EOS, carcinoma rectum, carcinoma esophagus, portal hypertension. So I don't expect any examiner will push you to extreme to tell the score of each mangled extremity. But as long as you know these are the 4 components, I repeat again: age, shock, injury and ischemia. If you can know these 4 injuries, and you can say, sir, if the score is more than 7, most of the time the limb is not salvageable and undergoes amputation. If you can know that much, it is more than sufficient. Now, the last point is, in the recent advances, is the local tissue sealants. You get this question as a half of the question. Enumerate the local tissue sealants in surgery, their mechanism of action. This has come quite often. And this is here only a part of question. So what last time the DNB paper asked, 4 marks is for the recent advances. So half of it goes towards the first procedures which I have said. Welcome Dr. Bansal. And now the other half, that means we are covering something for 2 to 3 marks in total. So you should be knowing only few things. I will name a few for you, and the young surgeons can note down, or you can read up a textbook of your own. There is so much of confusion data available. I am going to tell you only those things which are useful out of a lot of information which is available on net and on textbooks. So one commonly used first item you should say is a combat gauze. Combat gauze is a polyester gauze which is impregnated with kaolin impregnated gauze, which activates the intrinsic factor. Second is Celox Rapid. It cross-links RBCs and produces a mucoadhesive barrier. Then we have factor concentrations, where we have quick clot granules. This is zeolite, which absorbs water in blood and produces exothermic reaction and clotting. Then one common thing used is called as DFS, dry fibrin sealant. This you should note down. Dry fibrin sealant, it has got fibrinogen, thrombin, factor 12 and calcium. Then there's another product called salmon thrombin fibrinogen. This is derived from salmon fish. It is derived from salmon fish and is available in dextran solution. The advantage is this has no tissue reactions, is very cheap and easily available. Then we have Celox. It is chitosan based granules and gauze. The disadvantage is this has to be removed. So these are 5 sealants which you should know. Their mechanism I have enunciated. And then the question is, like they ask, what is an ideal suture? Similarly, you can always write 4 lines. What is an ideal sealant? A, which should not have systemic effects, which should be quickly available, which should produce local hemostasis without producing thrombus in the artery, and it should not become adherent. So these are few common qualities of a good local sealant. All of them, when you say, always say in the end, apply with pressure for 3 to 5 minutes, and they form a stable clot as a pre-hospitalization methodology. So that is all, and thanks everybody for participating. And this would also be stored so the younger friends can have a look at it again. And if there are any questions, kindly post the questions. I will be more than welcome to reply. Thank you so much. Have a good week ahead from tomorrow. Next week, on the same time, I'm going to present how to present a paper. Because when we reach conferences, see people presenting, a lot of youngsters I find are not tutored the art of communication. So how you should present a scientific paper or even a social paper, or how do you communicate on the stage? That will be the next talk next Sunday, same time. Okay.